So my name is Paige, and my Dharma name is Doh Jin, which means steadfastly progressing along the path of Tao. My journey to understanding is just that. It's a steady, lifelong journey. For me, it has not always been a speedy journey, or even a linear one. By participating in Sunday evening meditation at the Raleigh Temple and Thursday evening Dharma study online, I've slowly but surely come to learn many aspects of Won Buddhist practice and seen benefit from incorporating those into my life. At times, my practice has felt smooth and effortless. Have you ever felt that way? Like, if I sit for meditation, sometimes I just instantly feel very at peace, especially in a space like this. Or sometimes I'll hear a Dharma talk that really helps me understand a facet of this philosophy that was out of reach before that point. But other times, my journey has felt more like an upward slog along muddy terrain. For example, when my aspirations for my practice do not align with my behavior out there in the world, or if I start to feel a little overwhelmed by the depth of the Won Buddhist scriptures and how much I still have to learn. But recently, I finished taking the Turtle Chart Dharma course with Reverend Wangong. And the experience was sort of like a strong gust of wind at my back, powering me along my path. It wasn't just because I learned a lot in the course, although I certainly did, but the class also helped me see my practice in a new light. Today, I'd like to provide an overview of the Turtle Chart and also share a little bit about how it changed my approach to my practice. So without further ado, let's buckle up and start our tour of the Turtle Chart. And if you're here in person, there's a copy you can reference. For our friends online, there'll be some slides to follow along too. So the doctrinal chart of Won Buddhism is found at the very front of our scripture books, and it's like a handy little infographic of all the key tenets of Won Buddhism. It happens to resemble a turtle, which was an auspicious sign for Sotaesan, and I like to think a reassuring sign for maybe slower moving practitioners like myself. So the turtle's legs represent the 4 great principles. This is a perfect place to start, because these principles illustrate how Won Buddhist practitioners seek to move through the world. The first principle is right enlightenment and right practice, which encourages us to continually practice being free from bias or reliance, excessiveness, or deficiency. To me, this principle is all about finding balance in a world where attachment and the desire for more is really, really tempting. The second principle, awareness of grace and requital of grace, instruct us to put our gratitude into practice. It's a challenge to feel grateful, even in difficult situations, and pay it forward with an open and loving heart. The third principle is practical application of the Buddha Dharma. So Won Buddhism isn't just platitudes to ponder in quiet moments of repose, but rather a very lived practice. It's a philosophy that we're supposed to put to use every day. The fourth principle is selfless service to the public. We're encouraged to think beyond ourselves or just our family unit, whatever that may look like, and seek out opportunities to serve our much larger global family. All right, so to recap so far, the 4 principles are the legs of the turtle, illustrating how we might move through the world as balanced beings, greatly aware of the grace that we encounter, taking action to repay that grace as we make thoughtful actions and dedicate ourselves to serving the better public. But even with 4 legs to stand on, we can't move forward without a strong heartbeat or a good energy source to enliven our body and our spirit. So what is at the core of our practice? Well, at the center of the doctrinal chart, we find an explanation of Il Won in the transmission verse. These two sections are the very core of Won Buddhism and the foundation that everything else grows out of. Il-Won, of course, means one circle, like the simple circle image we see in our temples. This shape represents the original source of all things in the universe and the true nature of every sentient being, including each of us here. Il-Won can be interpreted as reflecting the truth that exists everywhere, is all-knowing and all-powerful. So in that way, some people choose to see Il-Won as another name for God. In Won Buddhism, the circle embodies wholeness, well-roundedness, impartiality, and selflessness. There's no beginning, no end, and it represents the law of cause and effect as well, a very powerful symbol. It's a continual reminder that we're part of one shared truth, and within each of us is the same nature that is shared by everyone else, including all of the great Buddhas and sages of the past. Below a brief explanation of Il-Won is where we find Sotaesan's transmission verse. It reads, being into being, non-being into being, turning in the ultimate, being and non-being are both void, yet this void is complete. This is a verse I struggled very hard to grasp for quite a long time, so I want to do my best to share my current understanding with you. So we walk around this world, seeing tangible physical things, experiencing very impactful sensations, and feeling very moving emotions. But all of those things, sensations, and emotions are empty or void of any permanent state or fixed meaning. None of these things can exist on its own. Each is completely dependent on the context in which it arises. And because the context is constantly changing, we too are constantly changing. Okay, so far we've learned about the four great principles being the feet of the turtle helping us move through the world, and that the core of the turtle is made up of two parts. Il-Won as the heart, that one circle image representing truth, and the belly of the turtle, the transmission verse, which is inviting us to see impermanence and permanence, non-duality and duality as coexisting truths. So this brings us to the sides of the turtle. Along the left-hand side of the chart, we find the fourfold grace, the four essentials, and the concept of everywhere a Buddha image, everywhere a Buddha offering. These sections of the chart kind of help clarify what is meant by the principles of awareness of grace and requital of grace and selfless service to the public. For me, they also answer some questions that new practitioners might have, like, what exactly is the grace that we're supposed to be aware of? So that's the fourfold grace, which consists of the grace of heaven and earth, the grace of parents, the grace of fellow beings, and the grace of laws. How do we create the right conditions to be able to serve the public interest? That's answered by mastering the four essentials, which includes developing self-power, the primacy of the wise, educating the children of others, and venerating the public-spirited. So put another way, we can't even hope to achieve the goal of selfless service to the public without the basis of equal rights, the knowledge of how to learn well and how to teach well, or a respect for the value of service to others. And what about the question, are we expected to make offerings to Buddha statues or enshrine images of the Buddha as part of this practice? Not in Won Buddhism. We're encouraged instead to treat all people with awe, respect, and gratitude, just as we would a living Buddha. By doing that, we see the image of the Buddha in every single face that we encounter, and each action we take has the possibility of becoming a Buddha offering. So these concepts fill out our turtle's body on the left-hand side of the chart. and they paint a more detailed picture of how our practice takes shape when we're out there in the world. In a similar way, the right-hand side of the turtle chart clarifies the methods and the characteristics of a strong internal or personal practice. We find sandwiched between the principles of right enlightenment and right practice and practical application of the Buddha Dharma, the concepts of the threefold study, the 8 articles, and timeless zone, placeless zone. As many of you probably know, the threefold study is comprised of cultivating the spirit, inquiry into human affairs and universal principles, and choice in action. A really easy way to think of the threefold study is pause, think, act. The threefold study is really the cornerstone of Won Buddhist practice, and as practitioners, we're encouraged to actively engage and grow in each of these 3 areas every day. The 8 articles are comprised of 4 qualities for us to develop: belief, zeal, questioning, and dedication, and 4 qualities to forsake: unbelief, greed, laziness, and foolishness. If we can model our character in this way, we can really make earnest progress in our spiritual development. Finally, we seek to achieve unremitting son in action and at rest. Put another way, timeless and placeless meditation. The goal is to develop ourselves so fully that we can let our minds function without attaching to thoughts, and to respond to all sensory conditions from a calm and clear state of mind, a mind totally free from preconceived notions or dualistic judgments. Seems like a really good place to get to me. So that's quite the grand finale as our last stop on the tour of the turtle chart. If you're newer to Won Buddhism, I hope that this overview has given you a sense of some of the key values of this doctrine and maybe piqued your interest to learn more. And for those of you who know this study very well, I hope it's been like having coffee with an old friend and getting reacquainted. I mentioned earlier that studying the turtle chart helped me see this practice in a new light. And I wanted to elaborate on that briefly in case that struck a chord with anybody else listening. So there were times before taking this turtle chart class where my practice felt pretty complicated and sort of all-consuming. There seemed to be a lot of things to remember. 4 of this, 4 of that, threefold here, 8 articles there. My anxious and achieving mind thought I needed to master all of it, and I need to have it mastered like yesterday. So when my progress was slow, I would become disheartened and frustrated and wonder if I was doing any of it right. Now, typically, my way of handling a big undertaking is to segment things apart and jump into project management mode. I like to make a lot of lists. I love a spreadsheet and an Excel formula. And before taking this class, it was kind of tempting for me to approach my practice in a similar way. My mindset was, how do I manage my practice so that I can succeed? By studying the turtle chart for 10 weeks with a fabulous group of people, I was reminded that this practice is not about management. It's about integration and discovery. Look at each item on the turtle chart, and you are going to find countless connections between each of the concepts. The threefold study is not separate or discrete from Il-Won or the fourfold grace. As you develop and grow in one area, your capacity for understanding blossoms in others. There's no one starting point or final destination in this chart. So instead of seeing this chart as a map, or worse yet, a to-do list, today I'm seeing it as an open invitation to start right where I am and explore. And I hope that you will also see and accept that invitation. Thank you.